If his speech this evening at the Council on Foreign Relations was a precursor to the handshake at the White House, then Prime Minister Modi may just have made the right noises. United States united against terror, greater cooperation in Pakistan, and a call for better Indo-American ties. He has now landed in Washington with a hope to kickstart a new chapter. But is a completely new chapter really possible?
मैं इस बात में विश्वास करता रहा हूं, जब मैं गुड गवर्नेंस कहता हूं तब मिनिमम गवर्नमेंट, मैक्सिमम गवर्नेंस.
The slogan coined in New Delhi resonated at this packed hall as the Prime Minister addressed a leading think tank, the Council for Foreign Relations in New York. As the crowd waited to get a glimpse of Modi's strategic blueprint, the Prime Minister chose to emphasize on Brand India and his government's mantra.
सरकार अब खुद ने बनाई है, अपनी अच्छा आकांक्षाओं की पूर्ति के लिए बनाई है, उसके कारण जनता के अंदर अपने आप में एक विश्वास पैदा हुआ है.
From development to good governance, Modi unveiling his vision, telling America that he dreamt of building a new neo-middle class.
Neo-middle class. जो लोग गरीबी से बाहर आए हैं, लेकिन अभी मध्यम वर्ग की अवस्था तक पहुंचे नहीं हैं और अब गरीबी में वापस जाना नहीं चाहते. हमने फॉरेन डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिए बड़े महत्वपूर्ण इनिशिएटिव पहले ही बजट में ले लिए हैं. भारत का रेलवे तंत्र लोगों का ध्यान नहीं गया है, लेकिन आर्थिक प्रवृत्ति का इससे बड़ा कोई क्षेत्र नहीं हो सकता है.
With renewed thrust on skill development, transparency in administration, the Prime Minister creating a strong vision for India.
भारत युवा देश है. दुनिया की वर्कफोर्स की रिक्वायरमेंट पूरे करने का सामर्थ्य हिंदुस्तान में है. दुनिया को कितने ही प्रकार के लोगों की जरूरत पड़ेगी, उस काम को हम करना चाहते हैं. उसी प्रकार से हम वो भी स्किल डेवलपमेंट करना चाहते हैं कि जिसमें हमारे एंटरप्रेन्योर तैयार हो और वो लोग हो जो जॉब क्रिएटर्स हो.
And then the audience getting a glimpse of what was in store when Modi meets Obama on Tuesday.
टेररिज्म का बड़ संकट, इसको बड़ी गंभीरता से लेने की आवश्यकता है और मुझे दुख के साथ कहना पड़ता है कि दुनिया के बहुत देश वो टेररिज्म के घिनौने रूप को कभी समझ ही नहीं पाए.
From terror to Afghanistan and then China, Modi had a message for Washington.
इतना तेजी से विड्रॉ करने के बाद इराक का जो हाल हुआ, अफगानिस्तान में विड्रॉल की प्रोसेस बहुत स्लो होनी चाहिए. अफगानिस्तान को आपके बल पर खड़े होने देना चाहिए. चाइना है, हमारे बॉर्डर के विवाद है, आज भी है, लेकिन उस विवाद भी हमने चाइना से हमारे व्यापारिक संबंधों को और बढ़ाया है, हमारे राजनीतिक संबंधों को हमने और बढ़ाया है.
Business, trade to strategic ties, Modi has outlined what India hopes to raise with Obama in few hours from now, as New Delhi hopes to start a fresh chapter in Indo-American relationship. Bureau Report, Times Now.
On the Newshour panel in Washington, Bill Clifford, President and CEO, World Affairs Councils of America; Jeff Smith, a Director, South Asia Program, a Kramer Strategy Fellow of the American Foreign Policy Council; Dr. Bruce Jones, Senior Fellow and Deputy Director of Foreign Policy Program and Director of the Project on International Order and Strategy, the Brookings Institution; Frederick Greer, Senior Associate Director, South Asia Program of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace; Ambassador Mark Lagan, Professor in the Practice of International Affairs at Georgetown University, a Senior Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and a former US diplomat.
You're watching the first Newshour Debate on the Newshour Washington DC edition with Arnab Goswami.
Okay, let me introduce my panel. We have a power-packed panel to give you a sense of how people here in Washington are looking at Narendra Modi's visit. To my right, we have Bill Clifford. He's President and CEO of the World Affairs Council of America. Bill, thank you very much. It's great to see you. Frederick Greer, to his right, is Senior Associate Director of the South Asia Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Thank you very much, Frederick. Good to see you as well. And to his right is Jeff Smith. Jeff is the director of the South Asia programs at the Kramer Strategy Fellow at the American Foreign Policy Council. Jeff, it's great to see you. This is going to be a big day for the India-America relationship. To my left is Dr. Bruce Jones. He's a senior fellow and deputy director, Foreign Policy Program, and director of the Project on International Order and Strategy at the Brookings Institution. Dr. Bruce.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for coming. Well, thank you for coming. All of India is watching us today, and they'll want to know what each one of you has to say about the way things could go today. Ambassador Mark Lagon is professor in the practice of international affairs at Georgetown University, adjunct senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, and a former U.S. diplomat, of course. Ambassador, thank you for gracing the occasion. And of course, Maruf Raza, a strategic affairs expert, my friend, and someone I now always introduce very simply as India's most trusted voice on strategic affairs. Maruf, thank you. Okay, Bill, we'll keep it simple, we'll keep it informal. Please feel free to interject. Basic question is this: how much interest is there in this Washington leg of his visit and in what Modi and Obama may achieve together? Bill.
Well, Arnab, we're not going to see 20,000 people in the White House or in the Capitol like we did in Madison Square Garden. However, there's tremendous interest here. This is an opportunity for India and for the Prime Minister to really begin to rejuvenate a frayed strategic partnership over the last couple of years. There's a great opportunity because there's been tremendous bipartisan support over the last several administrations and also on the Hill, and he'll be meeting Congress as well as part of this. And of course, there's a charm offensive that we expect to see when Prime Minister Modi engages the business community as well.
Is America too distracted? That question goes to any one of you, can pick that around. Some people say this couldn't have been a worse time. You agree for Modi to be coming here with Obama so embedded into several other issues and ISIS and the criticism his government is facing for the handling of these issues. Is that the way you'd look at it here, or is that cynicism not justified, Ambassador?
Well, I think that actually it is a good time. The agenda may end up being different, as you suggest in your lead-in, with a focus on ISIS or implications for the counterterrorism policy that might be enhanced by this moment. But I don't think it's a bad time. There are any number of reasons to try and drive further into a geostrategic relationship between the two, to go beyond sort of a stalled relationship of the past, and to perhaps talk about the two countries' respective views of China as a rising power.
Why has it been stalled? What is the principal reason this table, people, all of you around the table, feel the relationship has been stalled? I've been hearing this wherever we've gone, that the relationship has not lived up to its potential. Some of those who I met in New York said that every few years America believes it can make a fresh start with India, and yet there is disappointment at the end of the day on both sides. Why is this the case, Jeff?
Well, I think expectations were raised very high in 2005 when we signed a civil nuclear deal and a 10-year defense partnership agreement. There was a tremendous amount of energy in the relationship and inspiration in the relationship. And one of the things that really began to drain some of that momentum was the 2008 financial crisis, when you saw both countries really make an inward turn toward domestic politics and economic performance. And I think that sapped the motivation behind this foreign policy engagement to some degree. And then you had a litany of minor and some more major hiccups in the relationship. The Cobra Gate affair, the MMRCA deal, some disagreements about the pace of withdrawal from Afghanistan. And taken together, I think, these eventually drain some of that momentum.
Yeah, but no relationship should be hinged only on one issue. And don't you feel, Frederick, that there was too much emphasis given on the Indo-US nuclear deal?
Well, there was probably too much emphasis given to the U.S. nuclear deal, but at the same time, this was the reversal of decades of U.S. non-proliferation policies. So this was certainly a big effort on the part of the U.S. to reach out to India, and the expectation were accordingly high. So when the first thing India does right after is to vote the liability clause, which de facto kills the deal for any practical purpose, and we have seen no development since then of course the momentum falls down. Then since then we have had, of course, the diminishing of the India's growth rate. India suddenly became less attractive. So both at the strategic level as well at the economic level, all the actors who actually supported the deal felt a bit frustrated about it.
Right, so everything was falling well together around 2008, 9, 10. But I think one thing which I don't know if it's much attention given to it, for any relationship to be successful and for critical decisions to be taken to push that relationship, you have to have a strong political leadership on both sides. And Dr. Bruce, I don't know whether Washington is aware of the fact that since 2010-11, Manmohan Singh himself, in his second term as Prime Minister, was much weakened after the corruption scandals of 2010. Maybe that took away some of the inertia that was built up in 2008-9.
I think that's fair, but I think it's also true to say that the attention and the understanding of India in this capital is still fairly slim. You don't have a senior advisor to the president in the White House on India. There's no special assistant on India in the White House in the same way you would have it on some of the other relationships. There isn't an infrastructure that sustains that relationship through this turbulence. And I think one of the key things in this trip, you'll have the effort to build a personal relationship between the two individuals, between Obama and Modi. But if they're going to sustain it and not see this kind of slip back and fall away from high expectations, they're going to have to invest in finding ways to build the kind of structures and patterns that can sustain the relationship through difficult times. The two countries have an enormous possibility, but they also disagree very importantly on some major issues, and they're going to have to work through those over time.
We were talking to Stephen Cohen earlier today, and when I asked him that, Dr. Cohen, in your view, what really is going to be the starting point of this conversation, and he said that I'm going to be very interested in knowing who your full-time next defense minister is going to be, though we have a defense minister who's also a finance minister. I think he was using that as a case in point. He said everything depends on the defense ties between the two countries, and the business potential, Maruf, he said, of that was very tremendous. But what worried me with the follow-up to what he said, I asked him, so that's business, why would it be linked to a strategic relationship? And Maruf, maybe you can tell all our panelists what he said. He said that, well, America would expect India to be more in line with its own vision of the world.
Well, that is really a problem.
That's the problem area.
I think that's the big problem area. I mean, you said the right thing, because one of the prices that you pay for dealing with a democracy is you have a multiple set of opinions, you have disagreement, and if you want us to take the democratic route of putting legislation and other things in place, this leads to a lot of dissent within our polity. Now, coincidentally, let me first say the flip side of things and then give you the good picture. Coincidentally, when we were debating the nuclear liability laws, unfortunately, the ghost of the Bhopal tragedy once again hit our public perception, and it became a matter of debate which influenced a lot of politicians into trying to sort of block the liability or make it much, much more difficult for anybody to come in to do nuclear business in India. Having said that, I think there are a lot of positives that have happened in the last 10 years.
No, but just one point. It was just ahead. Look at the timing of that, Maruf. It was 2013. Manmohan Singh was about to visit Washington, and there was a huge row, you may be aware of, when it was emerged that the government may use some opinion rendered by the Attorney General of India, the late Ghulam Vanawati, to ease the supplier's liability. So it wasn't as if Manmohan Singh was not trying. In fact, the criticism was Manmohan Singh was trying to get the liability clause diluted, but through the back door. And the BJP then was the opposition party. It was up in arms, forcing the government to clarify that there was no such move. I don't think the BJP, having done that, now that it is back in power, will be in any position.
But let me
to dilute this liability clause. So just before you move on, Maruf,
I need to complete one point.
Okay,
I need to complete one point. That having said that, there's been a lot of movement on the positives. America has become India's largest defense supplier. It's a market which is still expanding. It's the world's largest defense importer. American technology transfers to India are beginning to take place. There is, and I'm personally, rather critical of many foreign policy issues, but let me tell you, I think give or take a little, there is the biggest possibility of India moving onto the world stage as a friend of America and not opposing America. I think we need to understand that not enough has been done to put that picture across amongst those in Washington who just see the mother of all military deals, that is the new MMRCA deal not having gone through, but you got a lot of stuff almost to the similar amount through the FMS deals.
Okay, I think we are getting a response from this side. Why don't you respond?
I've been very encouraged by the growth in the defense relationship. I mean, if you go back to 2005, 2006, our defense trade was $0.
Yes.
$0. It was $11 billion by 2011. I mean, if you take a long sweep, if you look at the relationship in the long sweep of history, progress has been absolutely remarkable. And I think people who argue that the U.S.-India relationship has been oversold are inflating the costs of the relationship and underappreciating the benefits. I think that they're especially inflating the costs because when you look at what has the U.S.-India relationship cost the United States, it's been nothing. There are some things that some benefits that we haven't realized, like arms deals, but that's natural to happen in a relationship. So I think you're right to dwell on these positive aspects, and I think we have made progress. Sometimes we get a little too focused on short-term agenda items, but in the long sweep of things.
So why raise items in which there's going to be no movement? So that's
because there is genuine disappointment here.
Well, I'm sure there is, but the view is if the BJP were to dilute even 1% or 0.5% on the nuclear liability clause, because last time it was the 27th of September, Frederick, Bill, I'd like your response to that. 27th September, I remember Manmohan Singh was about to come here, and there was such a hue and cry. It was a build-up to an election, and the BJP said you're selling away India's strategic interests just because you want to carry a gift for certain American companies. So, is there going to be that empathy that, having taken a position, Modi can't dilute that issue? Because the Congress will then turn around and say, you never had a consistency on your foreign policy, now you're doing a sellout. Can these kind of prickly issues be taken off the table? Can you just take it off the table, perhaps?
Well, I think that you're defining the difficulty that Mr. Modi will find in meeting Mr. Obama. The issue will be how do we define a relationship that will help bypass all the difficulties that happened in the past. But at the same time, you're making the question and the answer, meaning on the one side you say, well, there was a lot of goodwill, but at the same time, the very BJP, which today is asking for more cooperation, more technology transfer, more like everything else the previous governor has asked before him, then shot itself in the foot. Then, well, there is also an Indian dimension to that. That shouldn't be, I think, eaten under the carpet under the pretext that Mr. Modi is visiting. Precisely what President Obama and Prime Minister Modi will have to do is define this working relationship that will help them overcome the difficulties that have been created in the past. If we try to look at things positively, that's the way we look at it.
No, the reason I've harped on this nuclear liability issue, because almost everyone with an interest in India seems to be at least talking about it, and there's a lot of commentary in this country on the nuclear liability.
It was so central to really establishing the dialogue when they did this nuclear agreement, and so the promise was kind of faded from.
Tell me, Bill, what would President Obama want from his perspective and the American perspective as any commitments, guarantees, or specifics in terms of movement forward in this?
I can't say that I know that there is a specific goal on this issue, and I don't.
No, not this issue. And broadly on the relationship.
Broadly, I think what you've talked about, and Jeff made this point about the short-termism. I think really what this is about is setting up a broader vision. Those things will be mentioned, those will acknowledge the differences like this, but I think what this conversation has to be between President Obama and Prime Minister Modi is really much more, what future role does India see in the Indian Ocean region? What future role are they going to play in upholding the liberal economic order?
Yeah, Ambassador.
It strikes me that there are three options in this relationship. there is getting caught in the mire of the continued discussion over the civilian nuclear cooperation, which is unlikely to move quickly to resolution. There are other strategic issues, such as counterterrorism partnership or how the two powers look at a rising China. But what's interesting is, what are the third basket of issues that are not the non-nuclear strategic issues? And I think a really important aspect of this ties together governance and economics, where the bloom is off the rose of the American neoliberal economic model after 2008 and 2009. China has risen up as a model for economic growth. India and the United States could make the case that democratic governance, pluralism are the bases for economic success and economic growth. One problem is that both the United States and India at this time have mixed feelings about pluralism. President Obama is focusing on counterterrorism rather than a democracy and human rights theme at the moment, and a BJP leader in India will always be a difficult interlocutor for the United States on the question of pluralism, because there'll be the perception that perhaps pluralism isn't at the top of Modi's personal agenda, given the difficult past of his own leadership in Gujarat in 2002.
Well, I take your point, but there's a bigger fight out there. I thought there is a bigger agenda, and I like the point that you made there on terrorism, because that is one issue that can really bring both the countries together. I was seeing, we were very closely seeing what he had to say about ISIS at the CFR. And he made the point on ISIS, Modi, and he said the beheadings are unacceptable, and we must work together, he said, to take on this threat. Now, gentlemen, as you are aware, the ISIS in some of its recent propagandas, has strongly mentioned India, and though some people feel that's more propaganda than real, for now, both the ISIS and the Al-Qaeda have referred to India as part of their global design. So there is a vested Indian interest in working together on ISIS. My question to you would be, would an Indo-US strategic relationship entail cooperation vis-a-vis the ISIS? I
think it would, and I think that the Obama administration is going to be looking for a signal from Modi that it's willing to do something on the ISIS question. Mark is right about some of the options that we confront, but certainly I think from the White House perspective right now, they're very much in a realist mode of trying to craft the right kinds of relations with great powers and to kind of squelch the threat of ISIS and of other forms of terrorism in the Middle East. Modi's on a world tour projecting an image of India as a great power, projecting the kind of energy and dynamism of India. Obama's going to ask, well, what are you prepared to contribute on ISIS?
So
and
what
I suspect
do you think
also, by the way, on Ebola. There's another major crisis the United States is thrusting itself into.
Yeah, but let's look at ISIS. India turned down an offer to join the coalition forces in Iraq in 2003.
Sure.
There was also, Maruf, as you may mention, an offer in Afghanistan, which had come up many years back, I think, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister of India. So what if Modi's cooperation is sought? Surely America would know that India has been very reluctant.
Well, one of the reasons India has been reluctant, I mean, there's a lot of important points that are coming out from the brilliance on this table, not minus myself. But let me say, as far as cooperation with fighting ISIS or greater involvement in Afghanistan, I mean, outside of the Western world, India has put in the biggest effort in Afghanistan in financial terms, in terms of rehabilitation, building, etc. But having said that, one of the issues why the Indian military asked the then government very clear questions about involvement in Afghanistan was basically on three terms of reference. Who's going to be in command? Who's going to pay the bills? What's the exit time frame? So if you can't define that, we have
but the Bush administration made a very specific request. They said we want 17,000 troops. They said we want it in the Kurdish region, a region around Mosul, and they had exerted considerable influence on Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee to do so. But we were not willing to get involved.
It was not about Iraq, Arnab. This claim by the military, this claim by the military was on Afghanistan. In Iraq, we had long experience of having trained the Iraqi army. We used to have training teams, and people were willing to go. The government was a little reluctant, but I I think there's the other issue that I want to just delve upon for a moment, and that is the Indian Ocean cooperation there. I think there is a serious problem there in understanding each other's views and perceptions. America wants India to become a partner in a larger sort of Asian game that needs to be played now to counter China's increasing influence. But please understand India's concerns. One is that India feels America has always been pressurized by a paranoid Pakistani military not to get too close to India. And simultaneously, India's deeper involvement with America brings pressure on India from the Chinese, and India doesn't know if push comes to shove, if the United States is going to stand by India if things get out of control. Because that was the experience that Japan had more recently. So there are problem areas which need to be also, Washington needs to give a much, much stronger signal that if it wishes to see India as a strategic partner, what is the level to which Washington wishes to get involved in our problems, considering that you have a number of preoccupations right now which are much bigger.